Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Gray Logic. This is episode number 3. My name is Julie McClelland, and I'm here with Ryan Sear. We are both life coaches who have come together and who are working on this weekly show to bridge the gap between polarizing topics, communication, and really just to help people find the middle ground between different beliefs. So last week we had a fun panel. And this week it's the two of us, although we are very interested in any questions or comments that you have along the way. We'll be checking those out too. Our topic tonight is what is truth? It is something that I have been really excited to jump into. And I asked, Ryan behind the scenes, I guess probably a month or so ago when we were kind of talking about topics, if we could talk about something that's relevant to today, because there's so many things that are going on in our world right now, and it really has affected relationships. It's affected. I'm going to go with relationships because of really strongly held beliefs, and that's why I'm so interested in this, because I have seen people actually stop talking to each other. I have seen people get really mad. I've seen people bullying each other, and not just to say that there's only bad things that have happened of this, but I just want to focus on this because I think it's so interesting that all in the name of defending truth and our beliefs. So, Ryan, do you want to say anything on the intro for this?
Yeah, I guess I'll add to that a little bit. I thought about it. I thought about some of your posts recently. One of the questions that you posed is, when does truth matter? When is it most important? And so I pondered on that a little bit, and I think relationships is a great example. And to just expand that a little bit more, I would say just connection. Building relationships, not just as a romantic relationship, but with people. And I asked myself that question again. It's like, why is it so important in that instance? And the idea that came to mind is that when we believe someone's truthful, at least to us, whether we agree with what they're saying or not, that's a huge foundation for trust.
Mm-hmm.
And that trust is what leads into building strong relationships through friendships, family relationships, and romantic relationships as well. So, yeah, really interesting. I think that's just one of the avenues that this topic touches on. There's so many different directions we can go. So yeah.
Can I answer that real quick?
Sure.
I love that you just said that, because when I think about it, one of our very basic human needs is safety. And safety comes through in relationships of any kind, absolutely any kind. So it could be your mailman, it could be, your neighbor, it could be the person driving next to you in the car, it could be a friend, it could be a family member, your boss, your partner. It can literally be anybody. In order to feel safe in a relationship, we have to have trust and respect. And we hold that same sort of need with strangers too, right? If you go to the grocery store, you want to trust that the person that's checking you out is not going to charge you extra, for example, right? You want to trust that you're going to be respected as well, that you can go about your grocery shopping and buy your apples or whatever. So it doesn't have to be a deeply founded relationship, a long sustained relationship, for us to need that trust and respect with people. And I'm bringing this up because as you were talking, I was thinking, yes, but I've also seen relationships that people don't even hold necessarily, right? Like take cyberbullying, for example. I could say something on Instagram, and I have people who don't even know me who feel deeply offended by what I've said, and now they want to come and attack me, right? And it's because they don't feel trust or respect with something that I've said. I wanted to bring up that relational aspect of it, because it really can be on any level. You don't have to know the person. It's relationships in general.
Yeah, you're right. And so it's interesting. So truth, what you're saying is, in some instances, when agreed upon, can create really strong trust. And then maybe in some instances, somebody else thinking what they think is true and what somebody else thinks they're true. And because there's that disconnect, there's a massive level of distrust between that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I think that comes along to, basically what I what I think about truth. And what that is that it comes down to perspective. Somebody may think a certain thing is true because they have an accumulation of experiences and things that they've been exposed to that lead them to think in that certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And same for me. And there may be, because they're different experiences, what I think is true and what they think is true is different. Yeah, I love this because this is one of the reasons why the show is here, is that when I made a shift personally to trying to understand and question my own truth and listen to somebody else and really consider it, um, I I have built more trust with that person, and I think vice versa, that person with me as well, because I so openly, honestly, and also with conviction, like not dancing around what I believe in, but really showing up with the conviction and what I believe is true, uh,
Mm-hmm.
openness to what they believe is true as well, does create a deeper understanding. So yeah, I mean, when we come into a conversation or relationship with that mindset, I think it really is crucial to using that truth aspect of agreeing or disagreeing and building trust into a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're having so many coaching things pop into my mind right now, right? There's a, there's a kind of a tool that I was trained in to help understand what happens when we don't trust each other, when we don't feel safe in a conversation anymore, or if trust or respect has been broken, then we're going to act in one of four ways. Essentially, it's four different ways of putting our guards up. We can either act like we're better than you, and we know more, we're smarter than you, we're more educated, we're holier than thou, whatever. We can act like we're worse off, like life's not fair, oh, I can't because we can make a lot of excuses. We can also act like you owe me. We can. It's more like it's the I deserve space. So you owe me. How dare you? After all I've done for you, we really treat somebody like an object. And I'm making a roundabout point, and I'll get there. And then the last way is if we don't feel safe with somebody, then we can be pretentious in different ways. So we can play a role. We can be perfectionist, or we can rely on a lot of external validation and all these things. And this is a lot of vague coaching jargon right now, but the point is that there is a deep understanding that we absolutely need to have that trust and feel safe in a space, and that's what we are cultivating here. Like, Ryan and I talked about this, and we have only scraped the surface of our own beliefs because we thought that it would be more beneficial, helpful to kind of allow things to unfold organically so that we're not coming to the table rehearsed, because it's so important for us to be able to show that we can wildly disagree about things, and that can be very triggering, but it's also okay. And it's okay. You don't have to burn bridges over it. You don't have to end relationships over it. And also, I say that knowing that there are some very deeply sensitive issues, that you're going to lose a lot of respect for somebody if they disagree with you. So those two things, trust with somebody and respect with somebody, are very important when you're maintaining a relationship, or when you're watching what your own beliefs or somebody else's beliefs is doing to that relationship. So I feel like I went a little bit sideways on a tangent there, but we can get back to the truth part.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's interesting to see where it bleeds into all other topics, and I'm sure that's not going to be the first time that this happened. So, yeah, I don't know if you had questions, but I had like my one question. This is like what I really loved about the topic when we brought it up, because I get so intrigued and sometimes obsessive about this question, and it's how to find the truth. Like how to find it, especially in an era of like fake news, right? Like, and like just like media and bias and so many things. And I'll give a good example, and I don't know if this is gonna be touchy or not, but just with like coronavirus. And I think just the ambiguity of it in itself makes it
Yeah.
hard to track the numbers that we're seeing in cases. And I'm not saying that they're true or not true. I just, when I do my own research, because I love to do research on these kind of things and like understand, like numbers are a huge thing for me to put some sort of context to it, but I see like contradicting messages on all these things. And so in an era where we have so much information, but don't know what to do with it, sometimes my question is, how do we find the truth in things?
Oh my gosh, that is $1 million question. Anyone watching, please comment, give us your golden wisdom. And if that's what you came for, that's what we're trying to unpack. And I completely agree. This is absolutely fascinating to me. When Ryan and I first talked about this topic, I was like head to head. I was in a different mind space where I was like, no, I just want to know what the truth is, because my head is absolutely spinning from, all these different standpoints on what's actually happening right now. And I will full out put myself out there, and you can judge me all you want. That's okay. But I'm being courageous and telling you where my head's at. When I started on, like back in March, I started this pandemic feeling absolutely terrified. Like I went shopping because I was like, well, who knows when we're going to be able to go shopping again, So we stocked up, like I inventoried my food. It was crazy. I was terrified. Food is a big deal for me. So,
big deal.
But that's, that was a product of, it wasn't, definitely anxiety went into that. And it was also like, what am I consuming? What am I reading? And things are telling me to panic. And I remember reading about the situation in Italy and how they were in lockdown, and how there was the guy who tweeted about, like, America, this is going to be you. And it was this big warning. And I remember playing Zoom games, like having game nights with friends, across the country in the beginning of the pandemic, and being, all kind of being like, this is scary. Where's this going? We've never done this before. And then as things went on, I'm with you where the ambiguity came in. There were contradicting, let's say, stories and contradicting numbers, and to this absolute moment right now, there's contradiction in so many different things, right? You have doctors who are getting taken down from Facebook saying, like, no, we have the cure, hydroxychloroquine is fine. And then you have other people who are like, absolutely not, don't you dare, right? So you have two different standpoints on it, and we're all just like, okay, so how do we know? How do we know? And I think a big part of it is with trust, right? And that truth, going back to truth, what is truth? That truth can be objective, right? So truth can be true for all people. And then truth can be also personal, right? It can be subjective. You look like you've got something to say already. You want to jump in?
I just love how it was funny where we thought we took a tangent saying that, like, oh, we need truth in conversation to build trust. And then we just came full circle and we're like, but in order to find out the truth, we actually need to trust the resource that's like giving us this information. And now my head's in a tailspin, right? Like,
yeah, well, and that's the thing. So I'm super fired up about this. Like, I'm sweating because I'm so excited. But so Ryan knows my original degree is in journalism, and my absolute favorite class that I ever took was the history of journalism. And so, in that we learned of the birth of the printing press, and then ultimately we learned about how journalism like went along with the birth of our own nation, and how it went hand in hand, and how it was, not just in our country, of course, but it was essential for sharing what was going on, and even in a small town, like we're putting a bridge in over here, or during the Civil War, right? When the blacks in the South were trying to share their news to the North, they wanted to have freedom. And so it was so fascinating to learn about that, because in that space, you have so many different independent outlets, because people are trying to share what's going on. And then, as fast forward, and now we have all of our news is owned by 6 major corporations. I think it's still 6. It might be, I've heard 4 to 6, but I'm going to say 6. And so that's an interesting thing too, because if everything's owned by 6 people, then, or 6 corporations, then how, like, basically, if you don't believe it, then you're a conspiracy theorist. So I have a really hard time with that very, like, black and white box. Tangent, too tangent?
Well, I got it's interesting. So I got a comment on my page. I shared this stream over to my Facebook page as well. So if you're commenting on my Facebook page, I'm trying to follow it, but most of them are going to go. If you comment on Julie's, it goes straight here. And the comment I'm referring to is actually from my mom. So hi, Mom. Thanks for tuning in. And I think she brings up an interesting point. And she says, take the politics out of the equation and trust the science. Mm. And that's like, I think that's a great point, and that's something that I've always tried to do. I have an engineering degree, and so I love to like look at the numbers. I've taken statistics classes, through all the science classes I've taken, and we learned how to come up with a thesis question and test it, right, and find out what holds up to be true. And so that's really awesome. But what I found is that some topics are so complex that numbers and experiments alone can't just give us the answers. Like so like, for example, if I get a statistic on, and I'm trying to pick one that's on how many like bedrooms there are in the United States, right? I get a statistic on that. Okay. I need to know the context behind how that was measured, right? Like, okay, who did this? How did they go there to each home? Did they do an estimate? If they did an estimate, how did they round? How did they define a bedroom? And so just like experiments and the parameters, at least around experiments, need to be rightfully thought through and explained. And then even just the numbers alone, there needs to now be context. So like now there's bedrooms, right? We have this number on bedrooms. How do we want to apply it? Does that mean that there's an X amount of people in the United States because now we have a certain amount of bedrooms? And I know I picked a very ambiguous stat, but this applies very much to things that we're hearing in the news nowadays. And you know what? I'll bring it up. It's one of them is police brutality, right? That's something that we're hearing right now. And there's so many numbers. And then we hear about numbers of how many police murderings there are. The races behind all of them, and then just murderings in general, like race on race, same race, opposite, different race, and I see a lot of people throwing those numbers out there to see, here's the proof, right? Like, here's this amount of people is they're doing much more violence at a rate that's higher, but there's history, right? There's history and there's context. Like, why is it that there are some police brutality? What are the things that they're pushing through the academy, and why is it that maybe there is a higher rate with certain races? Is there something that's behind that as well? And so there's so much more discussion that can go into it. And I think so the politics side, yeah, we probably could take politics out of it because that's pushing policies. But in order to get a clear perspective, I don't think that simply science is enough. There needs to be a lot of different things pulled in: science, history, maybe a little bit of politics. I think there's so many different angles that you need to look at in order to get a full scope of what's happening.
Yeah, there is. And I just listening to that and thinking about it, I do not envy politicians. I don't have any interest in ever being one. There's a lot to really consider, and I can understand on any side how it would be difficult to create a policy that, I mean, you're never going to please everybody, but also, like, what do you consider when you're creating that? What part of that matters, right? Because you're talking about how complex it really is. So that's where it feels like objective truths maybe are colliding with personal truths, where there's like this overall, okay, we have a problem with police brutality, objective truth, right? In fact, you know, I'm just gonna say it. You know, like with George Floyd, like objective truth, that was terrible. He shouldn't have died that way. And I'm probably making a stretch here calling that objective truth, but I'm calling it that because I literally didn't see a single person that was like, no, that was a good thing. Everyone agrees that's not how you treat somebody, and somebody should not be dying like that. And then personal truth maybe collides with that on like the communal level, like what's happening personally in our community. What are we seeing in our community, or what are we seeing personally in Minnesota, for example, versus what are we seeing down here in Texas? That your policies and our policies, they're, you know, like your policies can't just blanket our policies and say that it works well for us too. Does that make sense? No?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's what I got on it.
Yeah. The term that stuck out to me, that was like personal truths, like that, like personal truths. Like, what do you mean? Like, it's, and that's something I wrote about as a you know, a post to get some people thinking about this topic was, can both people have truth in what they're talking about? And I said that the answer is yes, and because it's in perspective, the way that they're looking at things, and I mentioned that earlier in this conversation, that it's based off of what we've been exposed to in the beginning. And then I thought personal truth, right? We talk about some coaching, like called limiting beliefs. Right, so things that we think, we absolutely believe are true, but only because we say it and we think it. And so therefore, like, I might be thinking, like, I am being completely honest to you, I can't run 8-minute mile, you know?
Right.
Like, there's no way, I can't do it. I'm not built for it, all this stuff. And that's the truth to me.
Right.
Then you tell me, like, well, people run like 4-minute miles and like they train and do all these things. Like, I really think you're telling yourself a story that you're believing and feeding into, and what you think is truth to me, and I think to a lot of other people, it doesn't seem like the truth.
Yeah.
It gets me thinking, like, oh, hey, what else do I believe is true? Because I'm so convicted in the way that I think, instead of experiences that I have, that I haven't even been like slightly opened up to the idea that those beliefs are perhaps I'll say false, or not wholesome, broken.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of want to take like an actual example and look at it from that, like, because I'm open to this. And I have had conversations with people where I genuinely am interested in, like, okay, we disagree. Cool. So tell me your side, because I'm way over here, and can we both be 100% right? I don't think so. Like, there has to be something that I don't know. And it's like what you're saying, it's perspective, right? It's looking at it. Okay, so I'm going to take the masks, for example. Like, okay. I, again, maybe losing some trust and respect around the world here with our global audience.
Yeah.
I personally don't like masks, and I don't like wearing them. And for many reasons, and doesn't matter. I don't know. But the point is, it is I could see it from my perspective. Like, at first, when you look at, they're telling you, like, I mean, to be honest, they said masks don't work. And then they said only the N95 masks work. And then they said, oh, if you have a t-shirt, that's going to be fine. You're like, what? Okay. So, what was my point? So my point was that, so my perspective was built off of things that I collected, like pieces of evidence where I was like, that's a contradiction. I either have to have this very specific masks, and they don't want us, regular people to have them because the hospitals are going to be short. So they want us to just wear bandanas. Like, that doesn't really make much sense to me. And so then I'm collecting more and more evidence about why my story and my belief on masks being ineffective and silly, like the fact that it reduces our oxygen rate, right? And the fact that we are, Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about how we are born, our bodies have natural vaccines in your tonsils. in your body, you're supposed to be absorbing things from the environment, so your body knows how to fight it off, and you're not doing that when you're blinking your entire house and wearing a mask. Okay, now you've heard all the things I've been collecting, right? So I've collected all these things that provide evidence for my perspective for why I don't want to wear a mask. And then I can very much talk to somebody else who's like, I read a comment on my next door that was like, I think masks should be a thing for the rest of life. We should always be wearing masks, and it's beneficial and it's protecting people. And obviously, I don't have a lot of evidence on that side because I'm building from my perspective. But I think it's like you're saying, that we can see things very narrowly from our perspective, and we can get very stuck in that place. And that is, so now my like personal truth is something that I might be stretching to the objective truth, where I'm like, no, masks are stupid. How dare you? You're infringing my rights, right? But for somebody else, they're saying, no, I'm like, for example, there are people who are at risk. And my perspective is not even looking at that, because I don't, because I'm not in an at-risk category, right? So somebody who is in an at-risk category, they're going to have maybe more of that perspective where they're like, hey, hey, what about me? This matters. This is important. And I feel like this is safe for us. So I guess what I just wanted to share in that is, it just had me realize that I really have like stretched my own personal truth to be the objective truth. And that's where a lot of really like digging in resistance and like fight comes out of me, where I'm like, like, I want to be right. I just want to be like, I want it to be my way. But the truth is that I have tried to like smear my truth on everybody's. So
Julie, you're in Texas.
Yes.
What part of Texas are you in again?
Houston.
So I check in on the numbers every now and then, but just how would you describe like the level of severity that you've been exposed to in your community on coronavirus? Is there like a hectic scare? Is there tons of quarantining? In other words, what I'm really trying to dig into is, how has your direct community and the culture of this topic affected the way that you see this entire, what we'll call as a truth about masks and the virus?
Right. Okay, great. So how is my environment affecting my mindset? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm trying to kind of go back to the beginning where, like I told you, I actually inventoried my food and was very safe and very, like didn't leave the house except if, we went to go walk the dogs or something, didn't go anywhere, didn't touch anything, wiped down all my stuff from the grocery store. I was very, very into that part of it. And at that point also, I think, Houston kind of switched where we opened up early, and then there was this big shift back where then there was sort of like the mask mandate. We didn't have a mask mandate before. It was a suggestion. It was we highly recommend it, but we're not going to require it. So a lot of people were wearing masks. In fact, I was uncomfortable because I went to stores and there were some stores where I felt like, oh, should I just put one on because I don't want to offend other people? But then things totally changed, and now they're absolutely mandatory everywhere you go. And so how has that affected my mindset? I mean, in a way, I think that's a great question, Ryan, because I was like, well, I feel angry about it, but I can see how that has also kind of that helps me to dig into my perspective too, because it goes back to that lack of trust, where I don't trust the swing in our leadership right now necessarily. I don't trust the way that they're not that things are going badly. Like I our numbers have gone down a lot, which is great. It's just that there's something for me that still feels off. And so I think that's where it's at, where I'm just like, well, I'm still going to believe what the evidence that I've collected over here, because I don't trust what you're doing. I don't trust everything that you're saying. And I don't believe you're being 100% transparent with us. So does that make sense? That's how it affects me.
Yeah, it does. It sounds like because So like because of the confusion and the conflicting policies that are being enacted in your local area, that directly relates to how you feel about it. Like I'm unsure. Like should I wear a mask? Should I not wear a mask? People around me, I see some people wearing masks. I see some stores mandating it, then some others. And then now it's like I don't know if it's statewide. I think in Florida it's not statewide, but it's like locally, like by a county mandated. And then so it's mandated, and then personally, like I see some stores, they say that it's mandatory, but then not enforcing it. And so that that feeling, I think, feeds right into like what I believe about the truth of the situation. And I'll use Florida as an example still too. It's crazy because we have these like numbers of cases that are going like, I don't know, Florida was like the most cases out of any state for like days at a time, like record breaking. But the environment of like where I'm in Tampa, and a lot of the cases are in South Florida. There are a decent amount of cases in Tampa and the Central Florida as well, but most of them are in South Florida. And so there's like the attitude and the people around me and the stores, the policymakers, it gives me this sense that that's what I fall into. That's where I kind of lie, is like, there's some things I guess we should be doing. Nobody really understands why, but I guess we're doing some of them to like to fit in. And now I think this is also a good case for those numbers that I was talking about, because I see a lot of like those things posted on media that Florida's having the most cases out of any state, right? So now at the surface, again, we have a stat, right? Like science. Let's say that we're recording everything accurately, which there's questions about there. So let's say that we're recording everything accurately and we have this number, but there's no context behind it at all. So Florida has one of the largest populations in the United States. So, okay, does that make a difference? It should. In my eyes, when I look at statistics, it should make a difference, because now there's still like the rate of spread of this virus still might be slower. Now, I don't have the numbers offhand, but I was watching that, and for a while it still wasn't at the highest. It's starting to get to the highest now. But what's interesting about that still too is that the death rate per population is not quite as high. And then you can also look at death rate, not per population but per cases. So like, how are we handling the cases that are actually falling into place, and how is our health system accommodating on that? So there's so much more context that can be discussed behind simple numbers.
Yeah.
And that's if we have accurate information, right? Like in my past life, not too long ago, I was doing consulting, and a big phrase that we always talked about when we worked with our clients on gathering data for information for running the business, right, is that if we put garbage in, we're going to get garbage out. So that's a huge thing too, that I don't know if we do or do not have a strong handle on that particular topic of coronavirus cases.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I see there's a couple of questions here. Lisa, that's my aunt. Hi. So, and actually, so the last question you just asked, how does leadership play into truth and trust? That's actually something that we kind of talked about. We didn't necessarily talk about it from a leadership perspective, but we talked about it for relationships in general, that in order to feel safe in relationships, safety in relationships is necessary for any kind of relationship you have, even if it's a fleeting, walking down the street, and you pass somebody. Or you have a long sustained relationship, or it's somebody that is commenting below you on Facebook right now, anything. We have to have trust and respect available. And so, Ryan and I have been talking about that a bit, about how, trust is a huge part of this. And just like what you're saying with the numbers, okay, so we can look at all of this, we can analyze all of this, and we can come up with steps from that. I added that on. But do we trust the information that we have? Right. And yeah, so that kind of went back to our original question, which was like, well, how the heck do you know?
It's tough. I think that's a really interesting question. And I think it has, like, leadership has to play a role in truth and trust. And I think, I think that strong leadership can give the illusion of truth, but can give trust. So what I mean by that is that when somebody is very convicted in the way that they believe and what they think and what they say, that builds trust. People are like, wow, that person seems to have an understanding of what they believe in and what they stand for. I
Right.
trust that guy. I trust I may not understand everything that he understands, but I stand by the way that he talks about what he talks about. Or she, sorry, he or she, you know, there's leadership on both sides. But so, you know, I think it builds trust, but there's still always that murkiness of, like, for earlier in the call, we talked about people believing a certain truth because of what they've been exposed to, the information that they've had, what they've been exposed to, and that's why they are led to believe the way they believe. So in short, leadership has an incredible influence on trust, and based off of how many people might trust that person, it affects the truth that those people believe in as well.
Mm-hmm. And people can also sort of assume they can take on a leadership position without necessarily being, I don't know, when initially when I was reading the question, I was thinking of our politicians. I was thinking about, people who are leading the way for us right now, doctors, scientists, people who are helping us to know what to do, how to handle the situation. But then I also, as you were talking, Ryan, about how somebody can say something with strong conviction and they can have you, they don't even have to necessarily speak the truth, but they can kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Embody almost like a leadership position just because they say it with conviction. And that's kind of like the whole, the whole gig on Instagram is like, well, I look the part, I'm selling the part, and even if that's not really who I am behind the scenes. Right.
Yeah, it is. There's something about leadership that really affects the way that we look at topics. And you mentioned safety earlier in this call, and I think that's why, right? Like, I may, if I just all of a sudden build up this trust level for somebody that I see as a leader and love what they speak on, and the way that they speak about it, that now, now I have the source, and I can just listen to them, and I don't have to look into anything else and make myself uncertain about big life topics and things that, when I'm uncertain about it, provide a level of, or takes away from my level of safety that I have. But that's what truth, what we think, if we believe in something and we think it's true, it provides safety. And so with that kind of strong leadership and a source to follow, a source to believe in, feeds in the reason why is tapping into one of those very human instincts of wanting to feel safe.
See, and also, well, now I have to, I'm kind of unwrapping this in my mind. And there's also some good questions and comments over there. But what you're just saying, so our very basic human need is safety or certainty. Safety is our certainty. And so I was just looking at that in my head as you talked about truths giving us safety. So is that an absolute? Does having truth give us certainty? In my research, I was looking at, just that question of why do we seek the truth? Why are we so obsessed with the truth? And I don't think that's not an absolute, because there are people who would rather not know about things that are going on in the world, and they would rather live in, ignorance is bliss kind of stage. God, that's like a whole other question. So what is it that happens? Like, what is it? It has a shift out of that place where we care when it becomes personal. when it becomes personal. Yeah, anyone? Are you reading comments?
So can I jump in on that?
Yeah.
So we're not actually unsafe not knowing these things.
Right.
So the very basic needs that we have, right, are food, water, shelter.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the needs to stay
Right.
alive and feel safe at the most basic level. Everything after that is like, like an extra blanket at night that like makes us feel like that much extra safe, but do we actually need it?
Mm.
Not really. And so those who are willing to challenge their thinking and the truth that they believe is so true, and then provides them some level of safety, because there's certainty about it to them. Um, that's where we sacrifice this. It's really what it is it's an egotistic like driven faith.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I like to talk about with working with people on, going for driving for goals and stuff, so that we have these truths that we think about it that are keeping us from going for our goal. Like I just don't think I have what it takes. And that's a belief, that's a truth that I'm using, that my ego is using to keep me safe, when the reality is that I have a fear of failure. I have a
Mm-hmm.
fear of inadequacy, a fear of not being like, it's a fear of all that, and that fear is self-serving
Yeah.
to help me feel safe, to stick to what I know and not push my comfort zone. And so that same thing lies in challenging our truths with everything that we know.
Yeah.
That having some sort of truth gives us safety. Challenging it strips it away from a little bit. But every
Mm-hmm.
time that we challenge uh, ourselves in that way, make ourselves a little uncomfortable. In my experience, and with a lot of people that I talk to, work with, when they challenge their comfort zone, they grow.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so I want to add to what you were saying about, yes, we have our very basic survival needs that keep us safe. So like you talked about, the food, shelter, I tell people, like, you want to make sure you've got, money coming in, the roof over your head, somewhere to sleep, something to eat. And there's also the perceived safety, right? And the more we can control in our environment, sometimes if we don't, like, as individuals, we tend to be very nervous with uncertainty. And so when we can't control, or we don't know what's coming down the pipe, or we don't know how to do something, right? If it's like all a fog and we don't know the exact outcome, then we can try to do things to really, like, hold on and control things and create the outcome that we want. And so even from a mask perspective, I can see that, like, so for example, if I feel like you're trying to, if I feel like I don't trust where the information is coming from, then, it triggers this feeling of unsafe in me, that I don't trust or respect where the information is coming from. And so now I want to do something different with it, because I want to control it so that I do have my own perceived sense of safety. Make sense?
Yeah. So you talked about sources there, right? Like the sources that give you that information, is a big factor in feeling safe about that truth or that information.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So that also, like, one other thing that I pondered about before this was, first off, do I trust somebody and what they believe in, um, first, or do I like listen and then build up trust? And then let's say that trust is built up. Now I have a reliable source, um, and now what they told me, what I find to be untrue, perhaps through research and other sources, is that source now uncredible, like no longer credible, um, or do they get a mulligan? And if
Mm,
so, how many mulligans do they get before they're unreliable?
mm,
And so I was thinking about that, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
I don't know the answers on that one.
I feel like that's a personal thing, right? And I see Lisa up there. You said, what is it about a person that allows you to give them your trust? That's a great question, and that's actually something that I love working on with people because that's just a universal need for people, is to understand how to create trust or how to be trusting in their lives, with ourselves, with other people, and then with something beyond us. So the how to what allows you to give them their trust is feeling safe. And I always, talk with people about building this with them, because some people, you may, like, for example, when Ryan and I met, right, we are two strangers, we met on the internet, but we had a link of trust because of the group that we met in, right? So there's already some like common space. We both have a common background with coaching, and so there's something between us where we can like have a little bit of like give and take there. And trust is like that. You don't go up authentically, I believe, and I can be wrong, but I think you don't go up to somebody and expose it all and say, this is my entire life, these are my beliefs, this is what I hate, this is what I love, this is what I stand for, this is what I will not tolerate, right? It's like a give and take. It's a relationship. It's like I give a little bit, Ryan gives a little bit, I give a little bit more, and it grows. It's more like a snowball is how I perceive it. What do you think, Ryan?
I was gonna make a joke and be like, Julie, you think I trust you? I trust you. I've told you I trust you. And yeah, I definitely I agree with all that. There's been this like I think there was a level of trust like in connecting, because like we I don't remember who I reached out to who, but we got connected and there was already like, oh, there's a reason we should be connecting like that. There's already that reason right there is already building up a little bit of trust, and we were connected through mutual groups. And then there's people that I have that might add me on Facebook. And I dig through. I'm like, okay, how many mutual friends do we have? Like, did I
Mm-hmm.
post something that they looked at? Or okay, I've got nothing in common. Why is it that this person's like adding me? And like, I don't trust this person. Like, I don't feel that trust quite yet. I need to have a conversation with them and understand them a bit more. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's a personal thing for me. Like, I maybe I need to trust people more at first, and I think trust comes in levels too, right? Like, all right, this person just added me on Facebook. I could probably give them my credit card, social security number right away, right? Like, that's cool. That's not really. I think there's maybe a little bit more curiosity kind of trust. Like, okay, maybe this person just wants to connect. Maybe this person's looking for friendship or a good conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe not trying to exploit, whatever I might have or whatever. So yeah, it's it's an interesting way, and then like topic, and then like we keep going in a circle on this because I think it is a circle. I think it is like trust. The more that we trust someone, the more that like we believe in their truths, and the more that we believe in their truths, the more that we trust them, and it just keeps feeding each other. And I think maybe when any one of those is interfered with, it interferes with both. It interferes with both our trust and the way that we see the truth that they give us and the truth that we see as well.
Yeah. And just because we trust somebody's truths doesn't mean that they're true.
Yeah, we that's like really like the whole thing here, right? Like, what is what is true? Everything's questionable.
I want to just say real quick, Brett, if you're still with us, I'd love to your comment. Some truth, while factual, might not be something I or we trust from bad leadership, because truth can be used to push an agenda or manipulate. I'd love to hear more on that from you. If you're here, go ahead and expand. And for anybody else, if you're still watching, we've got about 10 minutes left and an entire universe to cover. So if you have anything particular that you want to, cover, or if you have any questions about anything, or if you have any wise advice for us, because we're just digging in, feel free to share. Ryan, can I ask a question because since we've got 10 minutes left, there's something like big that I feel like we got to talk about.
Bring it on.
I know that face. Where is she going with this? My question is the question that I wrote about in my post, which is, what do we do when truths are contradicting? So when my personal truth is different than your personal truth, And we've got to find some gray logic to that. We've got to find some common ground to that, because if we're trying to live peacefully and we're trying to be respectfully, the answer is not like my way or the highway. It absolutely isn't. It doesn't make sense. I think we talked about this in last week's episode or earlier. It doesn't make sense to be like, okay, everybody who believes in this, go move over here, and everybody who believes in this, go over there, right? Like that's not practical either, and that's also not living in harmony. That's there's a lot of judgment in that. So what do we do, Ryan the Wise?
I'll tell you what my natural instinct tells me to do, and it's convince her that I'm right. Convince Julie that I'm right and everything else is wrong.
Okay,
that's what I want. That's what probably I've done a lot in the past. And it's not always beneficial to me. It's not always beneficial to the other person as well. And so I think what really helps is asking a lot of questions to the person that we might be engaging with or having this disagreement with. A lot of questions so that I can understand why they think the way that they think. And then I can share a little bit like, oh, okay, well, I see why you see it that way. Here's why I see that very same thing this way. Yeah. And so there's a little bit of understanding the other person, a little bit of sharing what I know as well. And then I think here's probably the most challenging thing to do. It makes me cringe sometimes as well, because like we said, like that truth that we believe in gives us some sort of sense of safety, and so it's probably natural that when I challenge that, it makes me feel uncomfortable and less safe. And so what I mean is asking myself the question, what if I'm wrong? What if what I believe here isn't true? And if that is true, where am I wrong? Mm-hmm. If there was some truth in what this other person believes in, where would that truth be? And quite often I can find something. And it's not mean that I completely drop what I believed in over here, but we've talked about a spectrum a lot, that I might move over a little notch and have a little bit more of a mutual understanding somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. I was reflecting on a real life experience that I've had during the pandemic, which is, as you know, I got married, and in April, we got a phone call from Grand Teton National Park. That's where we were getting married. And they said, just so you know, there's going to be a press release tomorrow. We're closing. We're not going to open for the entire summer. So no wedding for you. And so, I had to make my phone calls and tell people that, things were getting canceled, and we were making a plan B, and it was going to be small, and it's just something different. But something that happened of that is I spoke with one of my very close friends, and she's like, she told me that essentially she was like, oh, I was never going to come. Like she was going to come before COVID, but she's like, as soon as COVID hit, I was never going to come again. And her, and that was her really taking a strong action from her own deeply rooted truth, her own personal truth, that in order to stay safe, she needed to stay home and stay with her family and not travel, et cetera, right? And not go into a very unfamiliar environment, blah, 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 right? So, and my personal truth was, I'm getting married this year and I'm going to find a way to do it. So that was a way where it was very personal, two very personal truths colliding. And I think what helped me most in that was, just back to basics, like, respecting that she is a human and she is absolutely allowed to make her own choice. And when it comes to your own personal safety, I can absolutely understand why you're going to make a decision for yourself, right? Like everybody has the right to make their own decisions from their own safety. And I think, I wrote down empathy while you were talking, like remembering to have empathy with people. And that I think, at the end of the day, connection is more than our division. Absolutely. And that doesn't mean that, as my boss once told me, it's not all going to be kumbaya, Jules. And that, and that we're not going to disagree, or that like every single person on the planet is going to be, one. There's still going to be conflict. Absolutely. But I think, there's relationships that we want to maintain. There's relationships that do matter. We don't have to get along with every single person, but the ones that we find deep conflict with, who are close with us, who we love, who we want to find a bridge over and not have this burn our relationship or put a big gap in between now and the next time we decide to talk, right? Those are the ones that we really want to watch for, and I think take a step back and hold space and let the person have their way, like not have their way, but let the person have their belief and listen. I love how you said, ask a lot of questions, just being curious and not from a place of judgment, but listening because, asking exactly what you said. What if I'm wrong? What if I don't know everything? Because I know what I've seen. I know what I read. I know what I observe. I know my environment, but I don't know the other person's. I don't know what they know.
Cringing. Cringing. But you're so right. That was very well said.
What are you cringing about over there?
Oh, that again, just the idea that I'm wrong, right? Like the ego, like trying to flatten that ego and sit back and relinquish my safety, my comfortability for the greater good, right? Of truth. This thing that is so intriguing.
Yeah, maybe if we did that, maybe if we went around and we said, "Hi, my name is Julie. I have an ego. It's very loud and it wants me to believe that."
I should just caveat every conversation. I'm just going to let you know I have a huge ego. So before you enter the conversation, I'm going to do the best I can to put the reins on it, but just please be aware.
But we do. We all have an ego, all of us.
Yep.
It's something that I love that. Just remembering to detach from and check in, and also it helps, like, for me to, like, almost take the observer standpoint on it, like get outside of myself and look down, like remember that I'm just like a tiny piece of this ginormous puzzle of things that I don't even understand. I'm not responsible for controlling all of these things that are going on. And like, what am I trying to do? Zooming in this big and being like, no, this truth is all encompassing. How dare you? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's tough to be humbling and think about, like, I'm just a small piece of this. It's what I believe in and what I do, and everything is not the center of the universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we've got 2 minutes left. So for a closing, what would you say here, wise Ryan with the big ego?
Yeah, I would say question everything with reason. Not in a sense that everything's a conspiracy, but rather that perhaps there's something I'm not seeing here. Perhaps there's something that's underneath the surface, and there's something I'm not seeing here. And the last thing I would say is be open to having conversation with people that you may not normally interact with, especially with somebody who has an opposite view on a certain topic, because that's where I've had very uncomfortable conversations, somebody of opposite, political party affiliation, but have learned so much about society, people around me, the way that I think, the reason I think that way. If anything, that's one of the biggest things that comes out, is like why I think the way that I think.
Yeah.
That's a big realization. So challenge our thinking and have an open and honest conversation with people respectfully.
Yeah, beautiful. I know that's definitely been a thing for me since we met, and you told me, I was like, oh, I have to practice this. This is great. But also, I want to add to that, whenever you feel yourself getting triggered in a conversation, or triggered by an article that comes out, or something on the news, or something on your social media, or wherever, or in the grocery store, right? We see humans all the time. And again, whenever we feel that disconnect, when we don't feel trust or respect in an instant, our walls will go up, and we will act in an inauthentic way, meaning we're going to act like we're better than them, or worse than them, they owe us something, or we're going to be pretentious around them. So my offer for this is that whenever you are finding yourself getting triggered, when your truth is clashing with somebody else's truth, and you think that, oh, I don't trust this person anymore, and I don't think like them, and I'm going to shut down, or however you're going to behave, first of all, acknowledge that, I feel unsafe, even if you think they're deeply wrong and maybe stupid, even if that, especially if that, because that's the better than. But think about that and look at what just happened, that I don't feel trust or respect with this person right now. And when you can slow that down and look at that in your relationship, your connection, then you can also take action from that place instead of just being reactionary to whatever they just said. And so then you can have more empathy because you slow it down and you're not just like, you're an idiot. You get to slow it down and you're like, whoa, oh, I understand. They just said that, like I said for earlier, I have to wear a mask, and that conflicts with me being able to control my own safety, right? I don't feel safe anymore. I don't trust this. So instead of acting from this place, I'm just going to be reaction over here. I can look at it and I can see, okay, I understand what's going on here. And now I can choose to move forward, and I don't have to be all flared up, and if it's with, a person that you can actually have move forward with, like I can't necessarily go to government a bit and tell them I don't trust them. Then you can build a constructive relationship is my point. So closing point, take a look at your triggers and choose to move forward from there. You get to decide how you act in that relationship and if it's worth saving. Okay. I feel like to be continued.
Yeah, there can certainly be a part 2 to this one. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a complicated topic and always fun to talk about.
It was very fun, and we're going to let you guys go. Thank you so much for hanging with us. Real quick, though, we have more episodes coming up where we are going to have guests on. We love to have guest panels on, and we're not looking for experts. You don't have to be like a philosophy professor or an expert in anything, because obviously, we're humans. We're coaches, but we're not experts in philosophy. So we invite you, if you love to discuss, explore ideas, if you are somebody who's interested in bringing up your own perspective, or even learning, like saying, this is what I believe, and I'm willing to have a conversation about it and learn from somebody else who's on the other standpoint. That's awesome. We would love to know who you are, connect with us, so we can talk to you about what of our future topics are coming up and see if anything's interesting to you.
And next week's topic is about the belief of whether or not all people are equally capable of the same level of success. So we're going to have some guest speakers on that one. That one's an awesome topic. Very, very cool. And we'll see what we uncover. So tune in for that. Yeah,
next Thursday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. On Ryan's page, okay?
Yeah, it'll be on my page next week.
All right, thanks, everyone. How do I stop this? Bye.